Valentine's Day. Perhaps you were going on a date with your significant other. Or maybe you're going to ask someone to go on a date with you. Let these stories be a cautionary tale, to warn you to think before you go on a date with someone. Plenty of Fish date could have ended much worse. This happened 3 summers ago, but I remember the main events. To preface this, I have been on a shocking amount of dates and put myself in many foolish situations in the past. I am a female, and I was 25 at the time, if it matters. It started on the Plenty of Fish app. I came across a cute guy. He was my type physically, kind of nerdy looking. On his profile, he had very adventurous photos of him hiking and traveling. He seemed really exciting to get to know. Once he saw I looked at his profile, he sent me a message. We flirted a bit, back and forth, and he exchanged numbers, even though he lived about an hour away. He said on the app he's never been to my city and didn't plan on it, so we probably wouldn't meet. I respected his honesty. I don't like wasting my time. One day, shortly after meeting him online, he texts me randomly saying he is in my town on some work thing, and he invited me to a bar he was at. I decided to meet up since I was already in the area. He said he would pick me up. I was dumb and agreed, even though it was just over 4 blocks away. It took him way longer than it should have to get to me, and I honestly don't think he was actually ever at the bar. Once in the Plenty of Fish date's car, I noticed it was a rental, and that it seemed like he had just gotten his license because he was a terrible driver. After driving in circles, he told me to pick a place, but not in the area because parking is impossible. I picked a place 15 minutes away by car with lots of parking, but also a busy place since I was with a stranger. Once there, he started pressuring me to drink. He insisted. I'm not a huge drinker, but I enjoy pub-style bars. I caved and had a drink and was again pressured to have another one. He was very pushy and seemed really irritated that I wasn't going for it. Usually I'd end a date pretty quickly if being mistreated, but he became charming enough to keep me there, at least until we were done with our date. I saw an old acquaintance at the bar and wanted my date to know I knew him. In my head, I think I wanted my date to know that someone could identify him. I'm not a paranoid person, but I think my subconscious was on alert. After an hour talking in the bar, I tell him I'm ready to head out. He insisted we go across the road to get coffee. At the time, it seemed strange to me. Neither of us had much to drink and didn't need to sober up. Coffee seems like an odd choice otherwise. I entertained it. Once there, we sipped our drinks. He told me he rented a beautiful Airbnb in a nearby neighborhood, that it was more out of the city/country. He told me he had it all to himself and invited me, going on about how nice it was. I kept saying politely no and throwing around different excuses, which he would counter with a reason for me to come. With no intention of going, I agreed, but only if he would drive me home to get overnight things. I felt he wasn't going to let me say no. He seemed happy with that answer, so we headed out. While driving in the direction of my place, he said instead he would stop at a 7-Eleven and grab me travel-sized toiletries so I wouldn't need anything. I felt panicked because my plan was not to go with him. Something about him was off, and I felt stupid for even getting back in the car with him to begin with. He turned his car, and we were then headed towards the more country area. Literally, there aren't any 7-Elevens or open stores in the middle of nowhere. Then I mentioned that I'm actually thinking I'd prefer not to stay with him, and asked to be brought home. He then said something that made me completely nervous to be around him for much longer. He said he's sharing the Airbnb with the owners and said they are really fun and sweet and that they drink and play games together. He originally said he had it all to himself. I knew I didn't want to make it obvious that I was catching on to his lie, so I went along with it and said, "Oh, I have to wear my cute fluffy overnight PJs instead of my date dress, because I'll be way more comfy." Then I spewed off about a few other things. I mentioned that I need my medication and absolutely cannot miss a dose. Surprisingly, he turned around, and as we drove back into the city, I felt a bit more calm at that point. Not safe. Finally, we got close to my place. I had no intention of letting him close enough to know where I live. He was mentioning that he was going to come up to my apartment once we got there. And that is just a huge hell no. I don't know what I would do, but I looked for any opportunity to get out of the situation, knowing he could turn around and take me somewhere private in a matter of 15 minutes if he wanted. We got to a stop sign where people were crossing, thank God. I quickly but calmly got out and said, "Hey, I think I have a headache. I'll text you." I closed the car door and went through a public car park, which was beside a building that his car wouldn't be able to drive into. I looked back to make sure he wasn't getting out of his car or following me, and I could see him staring at me. He was so furious I have chills thinking about it. Within the hour, he had blocked me on Plenty of Fish. Looking back, I think he wanted to get me a coffee, to possibly put something in it. I think he told me on Plenty of Fish that we wouldn't ever meet, to maybe cover his ass. And I know he didn't have good intentions with me. Since then, I have met my fiancé on Plenty of Fish, and was super careful about dating up until then, making sure the first few dates were very public, and to arrange my own transportation. So, Plenty of Fish creep. Let's not meet again. My first boyfriend turned out to be a murderer. He was my first kiss, and also my first abusive relationship. We first started dating when I was a preteen. He was super attentive and protective of me at the very beginning. It wasn't until the 5th month when I started noticing the alarms going off loudly in my head. He had taken me on a cute roller skating date, and we had sat down for a bit to take a break when 2 of his friends showed up. At this point, the vibe from him was no longer safe. The smile he had 5 minutes beforehand was replaced with a look of pure hatred. He switched into this odd predator mode and told me to kiss him with tongue in front of his friends. I told him that I just wasn't ready to do something like that, and especially not in front of other people. He didn't like that answer and pulled my face to his and started forcing his tongue in my mouth. I was a pretty small girl, but luckily I was able to push him away long enough to start running towards a more populated part of the skate rink. I told him to stay away from me while I waited for my mum to pick me up. I didn't tell my mum what happened because I was in shock and confused. I was young and I didn't want to get in trouble for kissing a boy, so I decided to just ignore him until I was able to process everything. A week of successfully avoiding him at school passes when he has worked up the nerve to try and say something. He found me surrounded by a group of friends and decided to try his luck. I didn't even notice he was there until we were practically bumping elbows. Being that close to him definitely put me on edge, and he practically scared me to death when he started speaking to me. It was all pointless small talk until he realized I wasn't in the forgiving mood. Then his mood shifted like before, and he was just staring at me like I was the most disgusting human on the planet. I was holding one of those old portable CD players when he yanked it out of my hands and started trying to shove it in his bag in the worst attempt of stealing I've ever seen. I yelled at him to give it back, and I tried prying it from him, which apparently he took offense to, because he punched me in the face with enough force to drop me to the ground. I obviously started crying, and we were both sent to the principal's office. His dad was the football coach in the Midwestern community, so he was able to talk to the principal into only requiring his son to attend detention once for his punishment. We didn't see each other too much after that, and thankfully ended up going to different high schools. Then I ran into him at a Taco Bell drive-thru my sophomore year. I didn't realize he was the cashier until I was at the window about to pay, when he made awkward eye contact. I pretended not to recognize him and hurried with the transaction until I was able to speed away. Unfortunately, he saw our chance meeting as a sign of fate and attempted to send the equivalent of a "you up?" text to my Facebook profile. Unfortunately, I could never unsee his ultra cringy attempt at flirtation. "I think I saw you at Taco Bell today. I was the cashier. You're pretty cute still, and I was wondering if you wanted to send some booty pics." My response was an immediate block, and I made sure to let my sisters know about the incident because I just had to tell someone. If I had known then just how dangerous this teenage boy would become, I wouldn't have taken any of the incident so lightly. But I'm not a psychic. After some awkward laughs, I moved on with my life and continued to date less shitty people. Fast forward to today, when my sister sends me an article from her local news report featuring my dear first boyfriend's picture. Apparently, he decided to stab someone in the throat at a popular venue when they tried defending a woman he was physically attacking. We dated nearly 10 years ago, but I still can't shake the feeling that I definitely dodged a bullet. It's a strange feeling when you realize that dangerous people are weaving in and out of your life without you even knowing before it's too late sometimes. According to the comments in the article, he had a habit of assaulting the women in his life and had a history with obsessive stalking. I imagine justice will be served swiftly due to the manner of the crimes and the overwhelming evidence supporting a case against this psychopath. I hope we never meet again. I've tried looking online for more information, but I haven't found an article with verified names yet, since the crime is still under investigation. The attack happened in St. Joseph 2 days ago. Friends and family from the victims have been the main source of valid information so far. I unfortunately only have screenshots of what my sister has sent me from the comments and the posts that have been made by those impacted. I live in California now, so without my sister sending me the screenshots, I wouldn't have known it happened, since I have no contact with anyone else in Missouri. This is a real event, and it has impacted real lives. Hotel Stalker. So this happened to me about 4 years ago, during a tattoo convention in Toronto. I was still an apprentice tattoo artist then, and this was my first time working at a convention, so I was super excited, but also a bit underprepared. There were 6 of us going from the studio I worked in, 3 guys and us 3 girls. We booked separate hotel rooms, and the guys booked theirs early. Smart. Whereas I booked the rooms for the girls last minute, because I didn't realize then that the rooms would all be booked up near the convention center. Needless to say, there were almost no affordable rooms left, and I had a mini panic attack before I found a crappy Super 8 in Chinatown with a room left. I asked if any of the other girls minded, and they were totally fine with it, as we wouldn't be hanging out at the hotel much anyways. Fast forward to us arriving at the hotel. It's literally inside an Asian strip mall, and is kind of sketchy, but hey, we rolled with it. We checked in, unpacked, and headed down to the convention center to set up our supplies. Afterwards, a bunch of other tattooers asked us all out for drinks, so all 6 of us said sure and met up at the bar. We had a great night and everyone was having a blast. I really was not used to drinking at all, and it was getting later and later. Being my first convention, I didn't want to be tired the next day, so I asked if everyone else wanted to leave. They were all still partying, and I didn't want to ruin their time, so I let them know I was heading back to the hotel by myself and called an Uber. When I got there, it was completely empty. I walked through the mall, and it was silent and dark. I made it to the hotel entrance and walked past the check-in desk. No one was there. I was a bit creeped out and was kind of looking around. I took the elevator to my floor and walked past the communal breakfast area. This is where stuff started to happen. The breakfast room was dark, but I could see a silhouette of a man sitting there alone. When he saw me, he stood up, and I could hear his footsteps walking behind me. I tried to stay calm and said to myself, "He's probably just heading to his own room. You're freaking out for no reason, just because it's late." But as I continued down the halls, trying to find my room, I decided for whatever reason to turn around, which led to the most disgusting sight I've ever seen. The doors for each room dipped in the wall slightly, and as I turned around, the man behind me quick-dipped into one of the doorways, then peered at me from behind the wall. We made direct eye contact, and I swear my heart fell into my stomach. I turned back around and sped up, just wanting to get back to my room and lock the door. I was almost there. I was at a T-intersection of the hallway, and there was a fire extinguisher behind glass in front of me, and I could see him behind me again in the reflection. I turned around again, and I saw him again dip into someone else's doorway and peek at me. At this point, I absolutely lost it. I started running and booked it the last few meters to my room around the corner. I swiped my keycard so fast I'm surprised I didn't fumble and drop it. Then I slammed the door shut and locked it. Thank God I turned a corner because he didn't see which room was mine. I looked through the peephole in the door and watched him pace the halls for a few minutes before walking away. I immediately went to the hotel room phone to try and call security, but no one was answering. So then I called my co-workers who were still at the bar, and I told them what was happening. They came right away and helped me find an employee. I guess they have next to no staff overnight, and no security at all. The employee we did find tried to look for the guy, but he was long gone. He told me he'd checked the cameras, but I never heard if anything came of it. I don't know what would have happened if that guy caught me, but I'm glad I never found out. Guy from Plenty of Fish wanted to kill me. This happened in 2011. I'd just gotten out of a rough relationship a few months prior to this happening. My friends encouraged me to try dating again, so I caved and made a profile on the website Plenty of Fish. I was surprised with how many messages I'd received within the first few hours. Most people were just saying hi or asking to hook up. I wasn't looking for a hookup, so I ignored those messages. After about a week, a guy roughly an hour away from me messaged me. He was cute, so I messaged him back. The conversation was pretty casual at first. He asked if I liked to go for coffee sometime. Not thinking anything of it, I said sure. This is where it started to get weird. He started to get pushy and asked when he could grab a coffee. I told him I don't have my own car, so I'd have to borrow my mum's car to meet up with him. He offered to come and pick me up, but I wasn't comfortable with the idea. The next message made my blood run cold. It read, "I'm sure your hometown isn't that big. If I knocked at a few doors, someone would be able to tell me where you lived." "Are you crazy?" I replied. "I'm sorry, but that's kind of creepy." This just annoyed him. He messaged me multiple times after this. They said, "You know I have a gun. I could shoot you and make you disappear. No one would look for you. You're nothing but a dirty slut. I could kill you. I'll throw you down a well and no one will ever find you. I was really scared at this point, so I asked him to please leave me alone. He replied with the following: I know where your hometown is. It's not a big town. I can find you. And at this point, I'd had enough and I blocked him. I reported his account to Plenty of Fish and deleted my account. I was really on edge for the next few weeks after the fact. I was afraid he was actually going to come look for me. So, to the creepy guy who threatened to kill me on Plenty of Fish, let's not meet. Ever. Thank you for listening. If you like what you heard, why not try out another one of my series, which will be popping up on the screen right now, or consider subscribing. And if you're going out on a date, don't end up in a situation like the people from these stories. If you have a story that you'd like narrated, find me on Twitter, which is in the description below.